From the nation's capital, this is the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast with your host, Rob Snowhite.
Thank you for downloading the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast. I hope you are subscribed on iTunes. And if you're on iTunes, leave me a little review. I like to know what you think of the show. This is episode 233. This episode is all about Kiki Galvin, also known as Misguided. Kiki is one of the most generous people in the fly fishing community today. I asked Kiki to stop by the Fly Fishing Consultant headquarters to discuss her inspirational road trip out west, her volunteering, ghost fog on the Gunpowder River, her work with Temple Fork Outfitters, and her lunch with Lefty Cray. All while the Pixie and Dr. Jones are snoring on the floor next to us. This is episode 233, and you can find Kiki at misguided.net. All right, it's Wednesday night. We've got Kiki here, Kiki Galvin. Is that your real name?
Rob, it is not. Kathleen is my given name. Kathleen Mary is my given name. But I was given the nickname Kiki by my next door neighbor at the age of 2. So really, to be very honest with you, it's the IRS and my mother, God rest her soul, were the only ones that virtually called me Kathleen Mary. Everybody else calls me Kiki.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And what's the spelling of Kiki? Do people get that wrong?
They do. It's K-I-K-I. It's fairly simple, but I'll get K-E-K-E. Some people call me Kai-Kai. There's different iterations of Kiki. I don't take offense to any of them.
All right. So you are from upstate New York, if I remember.
Yes.
So for those that don't know, I've known Kiki now for 20 plus years, from when I was working in Orvis Tyson's and she and Leo would come. Yeah, you've just been everywhere and done a ton of things. So I thought, instead of having you just at the Somerset Edison show give a 2-minute blurb, I'll have Kiki tell her whole story. So let's start with, you were born up in New York?
I was born in Corning, New York. And, you know, it's not very far. It's actually the Finger Lake region, so it's not very far from Finger Lake. So my family and I used to go up. We rented a cottage on Keuka Lake. And so at the age of 5, many, many moons ago, that's really actually where I learned to fish. My dad would put me out on the dock after we collected worms, put it in the Maxwell coffee can, collected the worms, sat out on the dock with my little Zebco, reel, rod and reel, and the red and white bobber, and fished all day, and that's really where it started.
So the childhood, were you outside a lot?
Yes, I was actually a tomboy, so I was out, tossing the basketball around, throwing the football, digging for things. Yes, I love digging in the dirt. I love climbing trees. I had a real aversion to dresses and, looking pretty, and my mom didn't really care for that, but I would prefer to be in just baggy shorts and a t-shirt, just out exploring.
And that's the stuff you can get dirty in.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Were you collecting stuff, bringing it home?
Oh, yes. I love to go to the pond by our house and get the pollywogs. We brought the pollywogs home, we'd look at them, and at one point, I think at Christmas time, I got a microscope, so you could put the pollywogs underneath the microscope and look at things. So yes, I was very curious as a child about all things nature, frogs, bugs, lightning bugs, all of that sort of thing. So yeah. And
did that carry on through your school year ages?
It probably did. I mean, being a tomboy, I was fascinated by a lot of it. I loved animals. I mean, growing up, we had dogs, and I would prefer, if I was given the chance, obviously, to spend my free time or just spend time outdoors. I wasn't a big reader. So I did spend a lot more time outdoors than indoors, actually.
You were also an athlete.
I was an athlete.
You used to do some crazy stuff.
I was an athlete.
Did that start in your youth as well?
It did. I will admit this now, but I actually was a cheerleader at one point in junior high school. And then when I was when I got a little bit older, I played basketball. I ran track, which I really enjoyed. And then I actually went to the University of Cortland, became a physical education teacher. Obviously, I came from a long line of physical education teachers. And so Cortland was the obvious choice. So there I spent a lot of time, obviously, getting a degree in it, but also participating in some of the sports there as well. The later years after I graduated and moved from Corning down to Virginia, I actually really enjoyed, I started running. So I enjoyed running, and I started running a few 10Ks, and then half marathons, and then obviously most people, once they start doing that, they get on that trajectory of, well, I'll just do one marathon. And I said to myself, I will train for one. I did one, and then of course the next day I'm like, where do I sign up for the next one? And that kind of continued. You know, I actually got into rowing as well. I was on the Capital rowing crew team down on the Potomac for quite a while as well, which I really enjoyed. And then I became not so much biathlons, triathlons too. I kind of dabbled in the running and the biking, the swimming, and then I really didn't like the swimming so much. So I became a biathlete. So I ran and biked quite a bit as well. So I was quite active.
Were you fishing this whole time?
You know, I wasn't. I dabbled a little bit in it, but not really. I was busy teaching and busy with my running and my sports. So I didn't as much in the early years. I moved from Corning to Virginia, to Annandale actually, in 1981 to teach at Marymount Junior School. There was a junior school that was attached to the, gosh, it's a university now, but it was a college then. It was an all-women's college.
Scott Ron?
Yeah, off of Glebe Road actually. And so I was hired to be the phys ed teacher there, and I ended up working a little bit with the college as being an assistant athletic director as well. And so I was really busy with that, but dabbled in fishing just a little bit. I didn't have a lot of time.
Even up in New York and Cortland? Up near the Tribs?
No, not at that point. I was busy getting my education and, doing other things. But no, my fishing actually started once I moved to Virginia, and in 1996, I really thought that fishing, I love fishing, but I saw that fly fishing was an interesting thing, and I thought, I'll look around for where I could take a course or a class or something. So I ended up in 1996 taking a one-day fly fishing class with Phil Gay, who runs Trout and About.
Mm-hmm. Sold me my first vise when he was hanging out with Grizzly at the old Angler's Lie in Cherrydale.
And that would have been in Cherrydale, right. And in fact, once I took his class, he gave me a list of, with the materials that were given in the class, a list of flies that you should have to put in your box. So I literally went to that store. He was actually working there. And so he helped me purchase, a myriad of flies to put in my box to start my fly fishing career. So it was a one-day class out in Leesburg, I think it was.
Do you still have any of the flies?
That's his history. I think if I looked through my boxes, I might find a few, but this was 1996. That's a long time ago.
Were people saying, "Oh, you're doing this because of that fishing movie"?
You mean A River Runs Through It?
Yeah, were people you're just hopping on the bandwagon?
No, I just, as we've already talked about, since I was a tomboy, since I love to be outdoors, since I started fishing when I was 5, I think it was, for me, it was just a natural progression to do something a little bit different. I love the look of it. I love watching people do it. I just didn't know how to do it at that point until the opportunity presented itself.
And in the 90s, you couldn't fish without someone mentioning the movie.
Sure. That would be the first. Did you see the movie A River Runs Through It? And of course everybody did at that point, and it's a beautiful movie, and I probably have seen it 20 times since then. So the interesting thing about, of course, later on in my fly fishing career, I actually met Jason Borger, who did some of the casting scenes in A River Runs Through It, and went to his casting institute out at Hubbard's Lodge in Yellowstone, near Livingston. And he, to commemorate the actual movie and his part that he played in the movie, he literally developed or designed a fly rod that was pretty contemporary to the one that he actually used in the movie. And I actually have one of those rods.
Really?
Yes, he did shadow casting. I think he did 20 of them to commemorate the 20-year anniversary. And he had a few left, and so I have a numbered copy of one of the rods.
Really? Does that get fished?
Yes, it does. On special occasions, in fact, I was just out at Harmon's Cabins in West Virginia, and I fished with it all weekend and had wonderful luck. Yeah.
Right. So back to Phil Gay, was he your mentor? Were there any other mentors that were helping you along that you looked up to?
At that point, I basically took what he shared in that half-a-day course, and I just went out and fished some of my local streams. At that point, I can safely say I was probably the only female that was out on some of the rivers. That was Lake Accotink, Lake Fairfax, where they used to stock the little streams that came off the lakes. And so I just took what I learned and practiced it. Most of the people that I met were very nice. I think they were curious about a female being on the water. And I just took what I learned and I practiced it on the river, and I caught some fish, and I think that the guys that I were with, spent the most time with, were really curious at it, and I think they thought it was a kind of a neat thing because it was different. That's really how I pretty much started fly fishing most of the local urban fisheries, actually.
And when did you meet Leah?
I met Leah in 1991. I was actually living in a group home in Alexandria, Virginia, and she answered an ad because we had a room that was available, and we got to know each other as friends at first, and it kind of progressed from there, and it's been since 1991.
40.
Well, 28, 29 years, and we were married, and we didn't really, race into anything. We didn't jump into anything. We got married in 2014. So.
And now you can.
Exactly, absolutely. Yeah.
Things are changing.
Yes.
So when did you get into guiding? When did you just say, you know what, I'm gonna start taking people out? Was it a professional thing at first, or were you just casually, people are like, you know what, I see you casting, can you show me how to do that?
I think it was a little bit of both. Being a school teacher, I was comfortable teaching individuals things. And I would, at that point I had quite a passion for fly fishing, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to put it together? And people would ask me, could you show me how to do this? And I was a member of Chesapeake Women Anglers at that point. And we had a luncheon, and there was a woman who spoke at the luncheon. Her name was Sally Stoner. We were talking a little bit about her experiences, and she had said she had gone to guide school. And I said, well, you know what, Sally, I would kind of like to consider doing that, putting together my teaching skills and my fly fishing skills at this point. And she said, well, if you do it, look up Lori Ann Murphy from Real Women. She was the founder of the Real Women Guide School. So I kind of tucked that in the back of my head. And in 2001, Lee and I drove out west, our epic trip to Montana. And when we were out there on the way, we listened to The Alchemist that was narrated by Jeremy Irons. And he was talking, the whole story is talking about your personal legend and, why you end up doing what you're doing and what your purpose is. So we spent a week in Montana in the Unabomber cabin, as I called it. It was a tiny little cabin on the Gallatin River. And then the next part of our journey, we went down to Jackson Hole. We stayed in a bed and breakfast. And Lee said to me, we've gone to 14 states already. Idaho's only 13 miles over the Teton Pass. I said, well, I want to go fish the Snake River. She goes, no, let's take the dogs and let's go over the Teton Pass and go to Idaho. So we do that, and there's the big sign, welcome to Idaho. I stand in front of it. I get my picture. I said, now, can I go back and fish the Snake River? And she said, no. Victor, Idaho's just down the road. Let's go to Victor. I said, I don't want to go to Victor. I want to go back and fish the Snake River. Long story short, we ended up driving into Victor, very small little town, and we there's an Orifice fly fishing store right there. She pulls in, we jump out of the car, she goes, let's just go in. So we go in, and there's this very, very tall woman. I personally thought she was staying on a box behind the sort of the fly box, the fly shelf. We started talking to her. I said, my name is Kiki Galvin, and this is my partner, Lee Harvey, and we're out here visiting. And I said, since we're out here, can I ask you a question? Have you ever met Lorianne Murphy, or do you know who she is? And she says, I am Lorianne Murphy. And I looked at her and I said, you're kidding me, right? She says, no, I'm Lorianne Murphy. I had no idea where this woman lived. I had no idea what she looked like. And here we are in this small little town in Victor, and there she is in the fly shop. So I told her, I said, I talked to Sally Stoner. Oh, Sally, she took my guide school. She recommended that I actually take your guide school. And so Lee turned to me and said, remember The Alchemist? Remember the personal legend? This is what you're meant to do. And she said, the really strange thing about the whole idea that I'm never in the fly shop, she said, the only reason I'm here today, I'm usually out guiding, is my fly shop person, Kim, is actually pregnant and she's having a sonogram today, so I decided to stay in the shop. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been there. So the whole story of being told, if you go to guide school, look up Lorianne Murphy, not knowing where she lived, not knowing what she looked like, and ending up finding this woman in Victor, Idaho, was incredible. So she said, and if you want an application to go to guide school, I will give it to you, and next June, you can come back and go to my guide school.
I got to do the drive again.
I flew out to Montana.
Does Leah fish?
You know what? She does a little bit. She doesn't have the patience for it that I do. I'm a sort of a first light to last light person. She doesn't have the patience, so she will come sometimes. She'll spend a few hours, and then she'll go on her way and do something different, which is fine. I mean, we have different, hobbies and interests, and I think that's a way a relationship should be. So, because I love to be out first light, and I could fish to last light.
All right, so the next year, get a plane ticket and you fly out.
I do.
Leave her behind so she can do her hobbies and watch the dogs.
And watch the dogs, right? Absolutely. And I flew out to, I think it was Bozeman. They picked me up in Bozeman, and the school was actually, where we stayed was Three Rivers, and I do believe that was in Ashton, Idaho. And we proceeded to go through the school, and with guide school you learn, it's not really about the fishing as much as it is about the business of actually guiding. Liability issues, business issues, safety issues. But you also get to learn how to row a drift boat, and that was interesting for me. You also had to learn how to back it in and put the boat in the water, which is an interesting experience in and of itself. I think I got an award for the worst person doing that. But anyway, that's just me. That's just me. But you do learn a lot, and I met some wonderful people. And Lorianne, she's an incredible individual. And if there are people that I look up to, she would be one individual that started a long time ago in the fly fishing community, and sort of set her own pace and did her own thing and made her own mark. And so I was extremely happy to meet her and actually go to her guide school. So she taught me a lot.
And then you got a plane ticket back?
I did. I flew back. Well, prior to leaving, people said to me, well, you live on the East Coast, are you going to actually row a drift boat? And I said, oh no, that's way too much work. Probably most of my guiding and teaching will be walk wade. But they said, well, what are you gonna, it's gonna be a business for you. What are you going to call your business? And 2 seconds, it blurted out of my mouth, misguided.
Well, that's one question. I don't need to cross that out.
Chuck that one off. Yeah, I said misguided, and they're like, well, that's brilliant. And I'm like, well, that's just what came to mind. And so my motto is, don't be misled when you can be misguided, actually. And it's catchy, and it's worked for me, and once I got back to Virginia, had a few business cards, printed up. And of course I had joined my Trout Unlimited chapter by that point, and so I felt it was always very important to be a part of a conservation organization as well. And once you become a guide, you start attending fly fishing shows and seminars, and you network quite a bit. And I really started considering the volunteer aspect of my fly fishing journey because I met Phil Gay's wife, Carol Stevenson, who happened to be a part of Casting for Recovery. And that was in 2001, actually. And she asked me if I would be willing to spend some time and to volunteer for that organization. And I was more than happy to do it. Casting for Recovery is a great organization, works with women who are recovering from breast cancer. And, the casting motion and fly fishing in general, very, very healing. It's very rhythmic and continuous. And so I began that aspect of it by becoming on volunteer staff for Casting for Recovery. That gave me the opportunity to meet a group of women, a special group of women who are all on the same journey because they're dealing with breast cancer, but then having them be a part of Casting for Recovery, we gave them another group to be a part of. It's just a fly fishing, a group as well. So it was a neat experience. I had the honor of meeting many, many women and working with them and helping them to deal with their journey and their recovery. And, had the opportunity to be lead casting instructor at some of the retreats, also just river helper. I did co-coordinate one of the retreats one year because Carol was sick, which was really neat, a very interesting experience. And then just being on staff to do whatever they needed to be done, teaching knots or talking about entomology and bugs and things like that. So it was a profound experience in my life. And once you see, the healing properties of actually fly fishing, if you have an other opportunity, I always took it if I could. And I attended a fly fishing show in 2000 and I think it was 7, so it was 6 years after Casting for Recovery, that I met Ed Nicholson, who was the founder of Project Healing Waters. And so I got involved with that organization in 2007. And the premise is the same, they're the healing properties of fly fishing and fly casting and, just the hydrology and the hydrotherapy that goes along with individuals standing in the water while they're fishing. And was able to go to the Walter Reed, which was where the program was founded, and volunteer working with wounded vets, men and women. And same premise, it's very therapeutic and very healing. And once again, the entire experience, it was such an honor and a privilege to be able to deal with some of these men and women, to help them deal with their journey.
You say men and women, it was a lot of kids.
Yes, very young individuals.
Like straight out of high school.
19, 20-year-olds, absolutely. And at that point, also, you deal with the vet, but you also get involved and meet the family, the wives, the husbands,
the moms
the
were always
children,
so young.
The moms, absolutely. So
their
again,
kids had just left, and
yes.
now they're caring for them again.
Yes, yes.
That was really hard for me.
Yes, I completely agree with you there, and but again, as I said, and I know you feel the same way. What an honor and a privilege to be able to be a part of it, and kind of give back. I mean, freedom isn't free, and for them to protect and fight for this country, it's the least we could do. So.
What other groups? You did the Mayfly Project 2Fly last year, which will be coming back this October.
Yes, October 26th, I think. Absolutely. Yes, again, another organization, a different group of deserving individuals, foster children. The Mayfly Project actually reaches out and works with kids in foster care and foster homes. Again, taking individuals, and giving them, if they're in, a foster care, they don't have a family. they have individuals around them and they're caretakers, but it's nice to be able to give them sort of a fly fishing family, bring them out into nature, help them to enjoy, fishing in a way that maybe they've never had the experience. And I think, you help them to have a little bit more confidence. And I do believe that the Mayfly Project is able to highlight these children for adoption, which is wonderful. And so I've just started volunteering with them, and we did the Two Fly tournament last year, and it was a fundraiser. Obviously, all of these organizations, whether you're Casting for Recovery, Project Healing Waters, or Mayfly Project, they all need financial support. So I was honored to be the tournament director for the first inaugural, I think, Mayfly. I think it was Foster the Rise, I think the title of the event was. And it was a great event, and again, I think we were successful enough at the first one to return to Rose River Farm in Syria, Virginia, and have our second annual one. So I look forward to that.
How much time a week do you donate?
Well,
You've been given awards not only by Project Healing Waters, but also Virginia Fly Fishing and Wine Festival.
Right.
I mean, for people that donate their time in the industry, you're one of the people that I think of as one of the most generous.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. Well, I mean, let's just put it this way. I'm actually, I'm not even a full-time fly fishing guide. I have my own personal training company called Move, and so I still have clients that I work with during the day. On Wednesdays, I do go to Walter Reed, and I have been doing that since 2007, almost every Wednesday. I mean, obviously there are times when I can't make it, but I try to be a regular person on staff to be there, because I do quite a bit of the instruction, whether it's knot tying or casting, or seminars on what trout eat or where trout live. So I do that, and then I'm the vice president of our Trout Unlimited, the Northern Virginia chapter of Trout Unlimited, and I think it's since 1996, but I haven't been vice president since then, but I've been involved in the chapter since then. So, and vice president, I don't know how many years. It's been a while. So we have a meeting once a month that I usually attend, and then we have a board meeting that I attend. And I did with Project Healing Waters, did serve on their board of directors for a few years as well. So I mean, I try to balance it out, with my personal training and with my volunteer activities. And then obviously, I enjoy fishing enough to eke out a little bit of time to say I'm going to go out fishing myself, just because I enjoy that. It centers me, it fills me up. But I guess I had chosen in my journey or adventure, or just being a part of the fly fishing community, that the important aspect for me is just giving back, taking the time that I do have. And again, a lot of it is because of my wife, Lee, who supports me in what I'm doing, and I'm able to actually give a little bit more of my time in volunteering. So I don't know how many hours, but and it's been wonderful, and I've been extremely grateful over the years that some of my time and what I've given to these organizations has been recognized in some of the awards. And certainly you never do it for that, but it is always nice. I appreciate being appreciated, so that's part of it. It's nice. It's nice to be recognized.
Yeah. How did you get involved with Temple Fork Outfitters?
Jeez, the Project Healing Waters 2 Fly, for as many years as we've had it, Temple Fork Temple Fork Outfitters has always been a presence there, and I think I just got to know some of the representatives. I got to know the original owner and founder, Rick Pope, and of course Lefty Cray was always there, and a few of the other people. Steve Monahan, who is, I think, one of their reps on the East Coast. I think I actually offered Rick Pope. I think I spoke directly to Rick Pope, and I asked him, I said, I would love to represent your company if you'd have me. And he put his arm around me and said, we would love to have you. And I thought it was important not only to represent, a product that I thought was a wonderful product, but also being female, it was nice to be a part of an organization that more females were ambassadors of too, because in the fly fishing community, in the marketplace, I think it's always good when you have representatives from both genders that are involved with your program. And I think that's important in anything. I think it's important, that's why I became a part of Trout Unlimited, is I thought that, it would be nice for a female to be on the board, because at meetings, if a woman's standing up there and represented, then other females that would come to a meeting would feel a little bit more comfortable. So that was just important. I thought, I'm just going to put myself out there, and he said it would be an honor to have you a part of our family, because I consider the TFO a real family. They're a wonderful organization. And what I love about Temple Fork Outfitters is the fact that their product, the price point in their product is specifically made to be inclusive to all anglers. And that's really important as we move forward. I think it's important to invite and encourage other individuals to be a part of the fly fishing community, and that kind of brings me to the next, I think, push that we all should be concerned about, is just getting our children involved in fishing and involved in nature. I think that a lot of us spend a lot of time talking about the male, female gender and the percentage of who's on the water and who's buying products. But, most importantly now, I think that because of social media, there's so many more, I think, women on the water, which is great, and social media has been a great part of that. I think it's highlighted a lot of contributions of many women throughout the United States and the world, actually. But I think it's important now that we really join forces and get our children out on the water, because they are our future, and they need to have a greater understanding and appreciation for cold, clean water and our natural resources. So, take a kid fishing, I think, is a great thing to get involved in. And I love to teach, and I love to teach children. So, so they can kind of carry on what we've enjoyed all these years.
They pick it up faster.
They really do.
Women and children
Yes.
always pick it up. They listen.
I think part of it is they listen. Absolutely. And again, over the years, when I instruct individuals on, especially casting, I've always used for a long time, very simple, very easy, is the answering the telephone, the hello, it's for you. It helps children to understand how to make the casting stroke. And I've had children who come to me many years later and say, Miss Galvin or Miss Kiki, hello, it's for you. And their parents are like, hello, it's for you. And it's just something that's kind of perpetuated itself over the years. I didn't come up with it. I couldn't tell you where I read it or saw it or even heard it. But I really try to keep it as simple as possible when I'm teaching, and use, very simple verbal and visual cues that individuals can take 10-15 minutes with an instructor and then walk away and be able to remember it and be able to share that with other people who might ask, well, how do you actually fly cast? And they can say, let me show you. If you own a telephone, let's talk about answering the telephone and handing that telephone off. So they're able to actually teach and instruct individuals very simply. So that's always been my...
Speaking of kids listening.
Speaking of children.
You mentioned women fly fishing. You were featured in Blue Ridge magazine.
I was. Yes.
What, 6 women fly anglers you need to have on your radar?
I have to. I don't. I have the magazine at home, but I think it was, 6 or 10 women who are influential in the angling community. And I think the article was broad enough to include, as I tell people, I stepped into the proverbial stream a long time ago. So I'm a little bit older, but there were women who were featured in that article who were younger. So, it kind of spans generations as well, which is really nice, because as being a female angler, I always looked up to the women who came before me, Joan Wolfe and Fanny Krieger, and there's so many other women that that actually paved the way. And so it was a nice article. I mean, it was individuals who were not only, I mean, I live on the East Coast, but I do believe there were some women who were featured who lived farther down south, the Southeast, and I knew a handful of those women who were in the article. So it was an honor to be among one of the women that has been or have been thought of being influential.
Right.
So it's neat.
Yeah. Let's talk about your guiding. It's mostly cold water, so trout.
Yeah, for the most part.
What are your territories that you cover with clients?
Right now I actually guide in Maryland and Virginia. So, when someone comes to me, and a lot of it's either they see, my car actually, it was the best investment I ever made in my fishmobile. It just says Misguided Fly Fishing Services with my website. When clients come to me, depending on their skill level, we'll talk about where they would, what they would like to do, where they would like to go, and then I just kind of decide, given their previous experience or what they want to do, I kind of pick either a river or a stream in Maryland or something in Virginia. And Virginia's got great, we've got some spring creeks, we have Freestones. We have the Chesapeake Bay, I guess, but I'm pretty much trout streams, so I don't get into the stripe or anything like that. But so we have great opportunities in the state of Virginia. We have local urban fisheries, which are nice, and then we have, as I said, spring creeks are a little bit farther down south towards Harrisonburg off of 81. There's some nice streams. And in Maryland, again, they have a lot of freestone streams. They do have a tailwater, the Gunpowder River, which I do a lot of guiding on. I think it's a great resource. It's fairly easy to get to, miles and miles of river, easy access. And again, being a tailwater, it's fishable all year round. So again, in Virginia, sometimes with our freestoners get warm in the summertime and you can't fish them. I'll take people to the Gunpowder.
What time are you leaving to go meet clients? Because it's not an easy area, especially crossing the bridge near you.
Oh, well, you're right. You either get a really early start, you wait till the traffic kind of, dies down, and then you get on the road after 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. And again, it depends on how far we're going. It depends on if it's a half day or full day. A lot of times with beginners, I do suggest, a half day, because I think sometimes a full day is just a little bit overwhelming for them. And I'm a teaching guide, so, it's pretty much custom, if they want to learn things, great, we'll put them on a stream, and if they want to learn roll casting or mending or anything like that, I have no problem with that. I love to teach. So we'll combine a little bit of fishing and a little bit of instruction, and, any other questions they come up with. And it really just, again, being a guide, and Rob, this, on the East Coast, you are really at the mercy of not only weather, but water flows. And, we've had for over the past couple of years, actually all last year and a little bit of this spring, we've had so much water that, my clients, I book them, and then I always preface, our meeting with, I will monitor the flows, I will monitor the weather, and we'll make a decision sometimes the night before we go somewhere, just because it's been very unpredictable with all the high water that we've had. And so I've gotten in a few trips this spring already, and I've had to cancel a few because of the high water and the weather and things like that. But that's the way it goes. Nothing you can do about it. So
what's a typical outfit set up for your clients?
For most of the streams here, a system, a 5-weight usually, a 9-foot 5-weight rod, 5-weight line, I think is pretty suitable. They can fish ponds, they can fish lakes, they can fish the freestone streams, they can fish the tailwaters. If you want to get down and do some warm water bass fishing, which I do every once in a while, you can overline a 5-weight, put a 6-weight line on it, and you can handle the bass too as well. So that's generally what I really do advise people to buy in the beginning, is a 5-weight system. And then once they get further into their journey or adventure, they can start to buy a little lighter rods for maybe Shenandoah National Park for the brookies, the smaller fish, shorter rod. And if they want to get into, as I said, a little bit more bass fishing, maybe some shad fishing, they can start looking at the heavier systems. But I think I think a 5-weight is a great system to start off with.
Do you have a particular favorite season or hatch you prefer to guide?
Well, I think in this area, I think spring, if you're looking at a sulfur hatch, they're beautiful yellow bugs, mayflies are gorgeous, and they're pretty prolific around here. I think you can find them on quite a few of the streams that I guide on, especially the Gunpowder is very famous for their sulfur hatch. And
that's Ephemerella Dorothea?
Well, I think on the Gunpowder, I do believe, we have the Dorothea, we have the Invaria, and I do believe there's a Rotund. So I think there's 3 sizes that actually hatch out up there. So, and it's always, I always tell my clients, if we can hit the hatch properly, it's an amazing thing to see, especially if you really get a good hatch.
What's your go-to fly for a sulfur hatch?
Well, I mean, any of the sulfur patterns. Obviously, I always carry some nice parachutes and some nice duns, and you can even, to be very honest with you, you can even, if you don't have a sulfur pattern, you can even throw a small stimulator with a yellow bodied stimulator. Anything with a yellow body on it pretty much can do the trick in the beginning. Once the fish get a little bit more, as I say, educated, they start to get picky and they won't look at anything like that. But I was up in Harmon's Cabins this weekend in West Virginia, and we were having a nice sulfur hatch, and I just threw on a big old yellow-bodied stimulator and caught some really nice fish on, a stimmy, which was awesome.
That fly just seems to cover caddis.
Yeah, it does. It caddis, absolutely. It floats well. You clients can see it, which is always a very important thing when you're guiding individuals, that they can see their fly and where their fly is on the water. And so, I think the sulfur hatch. And I love, if we get closer into the summertime, I love me some ants. Give me an ant, any size, any color, and that's always fun as well, too. Trout love ants, fish love ants, and ants are all over the place. So.
Yes, there are more of them than us.
Yes.
Are you using an indicator with those ants, or dropped it behind something bushy?
To be honest with you, not really. I mean, usually it's just. I find with some of my clients, depending on the size of the ant, they're small and they're dark, that I usually use. I'll put a little floating on it, but I'll use some frog's fanny, and I'll paint the frog's fanny actually on the ant. And it's white. Frog's fanny is that white desiccant powder, and I don't blow it off. And it's a wonderful cider, and it makes that ant nice and bushy and fluffy and white. So when you throw it out there in the current, my clients can actually see it. I have been known to actually sink ants as well, put a little split shot on and sink the ants, because all terrestrials drown eventually. And that's been very productive as well. I don't necessarily use an indicator and drop an ant off of it. I don't see any reason why you couldn't, especially if you're using a little bit of a split shot and it's sunk. But I don't normally do that. I generally start completely top water. Just start right on the surface and see what happens, and then go from there. So, but
any strange stories you could tell? You got a favorite one of just a bizarre day?
Oh gosh. One time, this wasn't with a client, but it was with myself, where I was fishing. I think it was Morgan Run. This was many, many years ago. And you always heard the fact that, if a fish bites your fly or hits your fly, it gets sore lips, it won't hit again. You can't catch them over again. Well, I actually, and this is one time when I was actually fishing a woolly bugger, a streamer underneath an indicator. And I was fishing a nice deep pool, and I hooked into a nice trout, and the trout literally broke my line, my leader, above my indicator.
So you just see this thing swimming around?
So,
like in Jaws?
Yes, it had the streamer, the woolly bugger, in its mouth. Then it had the indicator on the line, above that. And it was swimming around the pool. And I said, well, I'm just going to rest you a little bit. I walked upstream. About an hour later, I came back. I could see where the fish was swimming in the pool because I could see the indicator. It was like a little buoy. I caught him again. I got the woolly bugger back. I caught the fish, and I got my indicator back.
So he ate another fly with one stuck in his mouth?
He did.
Strange.
Piggy. But it was just to see the indicator. I could see him where he was swimming around the pool.
Right.
He'd go a little bit deeper. It would disappear, and then he'd come back up. And I said, that's really odd because you always heard that generally trout wouldn't feed or hit again on something. But it did.
With a whole set of tackle hanging out of his mouth.
Yes. Yes. So that was a very interesting experience, actually, to be honest with you.
Do you worry about bears when you're up in the park?
I do sometimes.
So Morgan's Run, that's in S&P.
No, actually, no. Morgan Run is up in Maryland off of, I think it's, oh gosh, I can't remember the route number now.
Just trying to place it for the non-local listeners.
But when I'm in the park fishing, of course, I think anybody should be aware of the wildlife up there. Bears, sneaky snakes, as I call them, ticks, all that kind of stuff you have to be aware of when you're fishing. And of course, people will say to me, do you do a lot of wet wading? I'm like, no. And generally what comes out of my mouth is snakes, ticks, and poison ivy. So generally I wear, if not full waders, I'll wear, hip waders or something like that.
Stinging nettle where you are. Don't have that where I work.
Yeah, no, that can be another problem. I mean, you just have to be, aware and be careful, not only when you're out fishing, but especially if you have someone out there with you, a client, you certainly don't want to have them have any issues like that while they're fishing. That'll ruin their fishing experience. So you just, safety first, you always make sure that, that they have a wading staff and they have eyewear and sunscreen and a hat and,
How do you protect yourself from the sun?
I use, SPF 50 now because I've already had one bout with melanoma grade 0. Thank God it didn't go any farther. But I wear a hat generally. I don't wear sun gloves as much, but I always keep long sleeves and, apply the sunscreen to my hands and my face and my neck and the one problem I do have, the issue is I can't find something to put on my lips that really keep my lips from burning. So that's one issue I have. I don't think a lot of people do, but for some odd reason, it's
Dermatone lip balm.
Dermatone lip balm. I'll have
Dermatone is awesome.
Okay, well, I'll have to get some of that. But,
Yeah, they used to sell it at Orbis.
Mhm.
I don't know where now, but yeah, that's the sunscreen I use because you can touch fly line
Okay,
and it won't deteriorate.
well, see, and that's
plastics.
good too because if you're using something that,
And it's unscented.
yes,
So fish can't smell
and
it.
obviously, you don't want to be tying your flies on with some horrible scented sunscreen, and we all know what happens when you do that.
Right. So no one's really discussed the gunpowder. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Maybe pique some interest for people to go with you there as well.
Well,
Where is it located? I know
Right.
you go up towards Lancaster, Harrisburg, and you pass it.
Sure, yeah. For me, I jump on 495 up through Silver Spring, jump on 95, take 695 to 83, and exit is Mount Carmel Road. I do believe it's northeast northwest of Towson, Maryland. So from my doorstep to the actual stream, it's about 90 miles or so, give or take. And as I said before, it's a tailwater, which is, is important in the fact that depending on the flows, you can fish it all year because the temperature of the water is cold enough to support the wild trout population, which is great. You do have to monitor the flows, obviously, because it is the main water source for the city of Baltimore. So they will release water from the dam, whether it's from the top of the dam or the bottom of the dam, depending on the temperatures.
I thought they just drank Natty Boh in Baltimore. Whether there was any water involved.
No, they drink it out of the Gunpowder River. So you do have to monitor the flows and know your temperatures. I mean, generally the temperatures stay 40s, 50s, which is nice. In fact, it's really tailwater, especially the Gunpowder, is one of the experiences I've had where you can actually, on a really, really hot day, you can get heat stroke and you can get hypothermia at the same time. Because if you're standing in hip waist water that's 48 degrees and you've got 90 degrees or 100 degrees temperature, that's a huge difference. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And it does create the, I call it the ghost mist, depending on, I do believe it's the not barometric pressure, but the dew point, the temperature of the water and the air. It will create this really ghost mist that appears on the water. And it can come and go in seconds. And it's a really neat experience to see if you're there when it happens. And it can just come right down the river and it envelops you. In fact, at times it's so thick where if you're fishing, you could be fishing and the only way you know you've got a strike is you listen for the noise of the actual fish taking your fly, but you can't see it. I mean, that's how thick it can actually be. And last spring, I was actually fishing a sulfur hatch where it got so thick, I literally could not see my line or my fly. I just listened for the take. And it was that, again, that was just another really neat experience. But the gunpowder, there's a fly shop up there. There are many access points. It's easy wading in many parts of it, and there are, nice parking lots and things. You're not out in the middle of nowhere, which is good for safety reasons for people. It's a community access. I mean, you have the tuber hatch, you have the canoe hatch, you have the kayak hatch, you have the drunk tuber hatch that come down the river. So it's a community resource, but it's full of wild trout, and it's a lot of fun, depending on whatever season you fish up there. But as I said, in the summertime, when the terrestrials are out, it's fun to take beginners because, if you're a beginner fly caster, you're working on your casting stroke. With the terrestrials and ants and beetles and grasshoppers in the summertime, all you do have to do is slap your fly on the water. So I tell people, just make the sloppiest cast you can, ring the dinner bell, because once those fish hear that hit in that water, game on. So that's my favorite time actually to guide up there is either during the sulfur hatch or in the summertime when we can throw ants and beetles and grasshoppers. But and it's, as I said, it's a great resource. It's not a difficult drive. There's a fly shop up there, and if anybody's interested, I'd love to introduce them to the gunpowder.
You have a lunch spot up there?
I do. It's interesting you mentioned that. There is a plaque at the Maysmore access point, and it is to commemorate our beloved Lefty Cray. And so very often I have lunch with Lefty right on it faces the river.
Peanut butter jelly?
Peanut butter and jelly, because that was his favorite sandwich. And so I do very often have lunch with Lefty and sit on his rock and talk to him and have lunch. And if my client's there, we'll talk a little bit about his legacy and how much he meant to all of us, and my personal experience with him over the years, repping for Temple Fork Outfitters, and so it's kind of a really neat experience. And I do obviously fish with Temple Fork Outfitter rods, and so I think he's smiling. I know that. I know he's smiling down upon us.
Big gap tooth smile.
Yep, exactly. Sweet man.
She's got a hat signed by him, but she doesn't know the
the
value in fishing and what it's worth.
Sure.
Bright yellow TFO hat.
Oh yeah.
I think she's snoring now.
Okay, no problem.
Where do you travel to fish when you're not working?
Well, I think there's some great water. I do a lot of fishing in Pennsylvania. Whether it's near Chambersburg, you can fish the Latort, Falling Springs, Big Spring, or if you want to go towards State College and fish Spruce and Spring and Fisherman's Paradise. And I love me some brook trout. I love my brook trout, so I'll very often go into Shenandoah National Park. Most people, when you mention Shenandoah National Park, they'll say the Rapidan River, which is one of my favorite spots to go.
You've got a place out there.
Yes, my wife and I actually own a cabin. It's on Lydia Mountain, and it's a rental. So, when we're not there, we rent it out. But it's 5 minutes from the Swift Run Gap at Shenandoah National Park. So it really gives us an opportunity when I'm not fishing. We'll drive up into the park. We have dogs, so we love to hike. There are plenty of wineries around there, so we'll go to the wineries. And it's a nice place just to get away. And the park is absolutely beautiful, and it's got many, it's the east slope and the west slope of the park, and it's got, sports many brook trout streams. It just depends on how adventuresome you are as far as how far you're going to walk in and find some of those blue
You're still in great
liners.
shape, so
Yeah, they really
it's gonna
are.
be great for you.
Yeah.
With your work, you've got to be able to just go up and down those mountains with
Yeah,
ease.
I can. Being a personal trainer and sort of an athlete growing up, yeah, I still have quite a bit of stamina, and I will hike great distances to find some nice trout water, and so it's a really neat thing. I mean, the Shenandoah National Park is a wonderful place, to do, as I said, the hiking and the sightseeing and the fishing, and it's got such history behind it. So I would always encourage people who have never been there, to take a trip and just drive the park and do a little hiking and see some wildlife.
What about international or
Well, let me see.
Places you can't drive?
Sure. I have.
You mentioned Iceland.
Iceland, absolutely. I have a friend who does a lot of Atlantic salmon fishing, and my first Atlantic salmon fishing adventure was on the mighty Miramichi, the famous Miramichi River, in Canada. And unfortunately, that trip I caught 2 very expensive brook trout, and left there being a Atlantic salmon virgin, and I did not like that title. So my friend said, well, we could go to Iceland to do some Atlantic salmon fishing. So 2014, I flew to Iceland and met 5 other girlfriends, called them gal pals, there, and we spent 6 days, 3 days on 2 different rivers, and I caught my first Atlantic salmon on the Hafrlansa River in Iceland. It was an incredible experience.
Could you spell that if you tried?
Hafrlansa? Oh, Lord, no. Hafralonsa, I think it is. Hafrlansa. But Iceland, yeah, it is. It's just got a lot of letters.
It's like Hawaiian.
Exactly. Names are really long. But it's a beautiful country. And who knew you could leave from Dulles Airport and it's just like flying to the West Coast. I mean, it was a 5 or 5.5 hour flight. And it's a beautiful country. They're all volcanic, gorgeous, beautiful rivers, beautiful Atlantic salmon. They also have Arctic char and some brown trout as well. Both of the rivers that we fished, the Hafrlansa, where I caught my first Atlantic salmon, then I could boast the fact that I wasn't a virgin anymore. Then caught some more in a smaller river called the Vesterdalsa, which was another neat experience. And I caught more char there than in the Hafrlansa. But it was a beautiful, beautiful experience, beautiful country, great experience. And then for my 60th birthday, I actually flew to Patagonia, Chile, and stayed at the Coyhaique Lodge in northern Patagonia. And again, incredible country, beautiful, beautiful rivers. Just fished until I couldn't fish anymore. In fact, the last day that we were there, we took our float down, I think it was the Simpson River, and by the end of the trip, I would hook the trout and I would hand it to my guide who was rowing the boat, and I said, could you just please land this? I was so tired of fighting and landing fish that I would actually hand the rod to him and let him land it. It was just, that's how many fish, you could catch there.
At that point, you start throwing hookless flies?
Oh,
just
yes.
to watch them eat?
Absolutely. And again, along the way, I did have a flask full of some bourbon, so there was a little bit of, hoisting the flask when you caught your fish, and after a while, I think it was, you got so relaxed, you're like, hey, here, land my fish. It was a neat time. It really was. I really
Bourbon of
enjoyed it.
choice?
Bullet.
Okay.
Bullet bourbon right now. We like the bourbon, and we like the bullet bourbon. So yeah.
Yeah, you missed Dan, and I finished the Pappy.
There you go.
We drank some for you. It was definitely worth
good.
it.
Excellent. Yeah. No. Always kind of makes it fun, actually.
Are there bucket list destinations of places you want to go? Any species that are on the list?
Well, I'd still like to get to Alaska, and we do have a trip with a handful of my girlfriends, gal pals, as I call them, coming up in late September to go to Alaska. I do believe we're going to be swinging for very large rainbows up there. I would love, and I don't know if it's going to be possible, to throw some mice, because I love to throw mice patterns too as well. But muskie. I would like to catch a muskie. That's on my bucket list. That's on my to-do list to get done. So, as I said to you this evening, take me muskie fishing.
I'm still learning. Yeah, we can go try ourselves.
We should do that. I hear that you tie on something as big as it looks like a dead squirrel and you just throw it out there.
Well, she's asleep. We could put her in the back of the boat and go put it and turn on the lights on the stealth craft.
We could do that. So,
Mom's not here. She can't say anything.
So I would like to do that. I would love to hook into a muskie and a fly rod. Again, so much water.
Get down with Blaine.
So little time. Could do it with Blaine. Yeah, there are plenty of people who actually guide for them. So we'll see.
Right on.
We'll see. Yeah.
I got some other questions that are fishing and not necessarily fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a fly you won't throw? You just despise.
No, not really. If situations dictate it, I will actually throw anything. Now, my philosophy is I will catch any species, any way, anyhow, anywhere, as long as it's legal. So no, I don't really have a fly I won't throw.
All right.
No.
Do you have a favorite piece of just modern gear? Something that wasn't available 20, 30 years ago that would have changed your life back then?
Gosh. I don't, Not really. I mean, God, that's a, no. I have gone through, since I started fly fishing, and a lot of people do this, they go through the vest, just this huge thing that you wear and fill up the pockets. And then I went to a fanny pack. And then I went to just a lanyard with a few fly boxes, and that wasn't enough. And then I love my sling pack. I mean, that's one thing that we didn't have many, many years ago. I like my sling pack. It holds just enough.
Who makes it?
The one that I actually use now is by Orvis. It's an Orvis sling pack. I think it's nice to carry things like a thermometer, to know the temperature of the water. That's something that I didn't even think of many, many years ago, of carrying a thermometer to even temp the water to find out if the fish were even amenable to feeding. So I think always having a thermometer is good. Other than that, gosh, when I started, as I said before, stepping into the stream, the proverbial stream, such a long time ago, there virtually was no equipment sized or made for women, so I was slogging around in oversized boots and waders that were too long and big for me, and so it's nice now, 25, I don't know how many years later, that we certainly have companies that make equipment for women and clothes for women. So I do appreciate that my boots fit me and my waders fit me. But other than that, no, I think it's interesting. In fact, this past weekend when I was at Harmon's, I spoke about the trip that there was a gentleman there that actually put a GoPro on me. I had never used a GoPro before. That was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see the footage that comes out of it. But that's, again, I think that's something that has really kind of, it hasn't revolutionized anything, but it's kind of a neat thing to be able to show individuals your actual experience as it's happening, instead of trying to fumble around with the phone in one hand and the rod in the other. I mean, it's nice to be able to have the camera, the GoPro on you, so you don't have to worry about that. So I think that's neat.
Trying to get mine to film. I saw the original clunky one.
Yeah.
There was a guy, I didn't realize at this time, he was behind us shooting at blue herons with a slingshot. And then there was a confrontation on shore, and I'm like, I need to film all this in case something goes down.
Well, sure. There you go. So you will be able to chronicle that.
And I got none of it because my thing takes so long to start up.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting, tool, I think, to actually chronicle. And of course, the day and age of all of our social media with YouTube. I could sit and watch YouTube video. I'm sure much of it is shot on a GoPro of people fishing and their experiences. So
I was watching on how to use a bait caster.
Well, there you go, because you've got a bait caster that you found, and you need to really know how to sling that thing around.
I wouldn't mind. I mean, I have no interest in using it to catch a snakehead, but I wouldn't mind throwing a rubber frog, like I see all the people do.
Yeah.
Catch one in the back.
Yeah, you catch a big old bass.
Yeah. What's your favorite sandwich you've ever eaten? Best sandwich place?
Oh, good Lord. You're going to laugh at this, but I love Jimmy John's. I go to Jimmy John's, and in fact, I had one for dinner this evening before I came here.
What'd you get on it?
Turkey, oregano, lettuce, tomato, a little bit of mayo, and a little bit of the vinegar and oil.
Sounds pretty good. I'd eat that right now.
Yeah, it was good.
If you could have a superpower to make you a better angler, what would you choose? Superhero power.
I don't know about that. Better angler? Probably a little bit. Probably the superpower of being able to go from human form to fishy form, to actually become the fish and know exactly what's going on down there below the surface. I think that would make me a better angler.
That works for me.
Yeah.
What's the worst place you've ever fished?
Well, I would say fish live in beautiful places.
Was there a place that just sucked? Like you didn't catch anything, you broke a rod? Something like Alexander's terrible, no good, very bad day.
Good Lord.
Break a shoelace.
Oh, that's happened. Well, I've broken my my boa boots.
That's right, I was going to fix them. I forgot what
Not
happened.
fun! It happened this past weekend, so I should have brought it over here for you.
Yeah, I can fix those quick now.
Gosh, okay. It's not one specific place, but when you encounter a day when it starts to rain, the water starts to rise, and your waders leak, and once your waders start leaking, it's just bad juju. Everything falls apart from there. You're uncomfortable. It's no fun anymore. You're asking yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I here? And that's happened to me several times.
I can't be cold and wet.
No, because you cannot concentrate. You cannot concentrate when you're cold and wet. So that's happened to me a few times.
Do you have any irrational phobias?
I'm phobic of lightning. Lightning is the only thing I'm phobic. And for a good reason, especially being an angler. You're out there and you can invite a situation because you're near water. You've got a lightning rod in your hand. And so, yes, I have a real phobia for lightning. Now, I have never had, knock on wood, any experience of being struck by lightning. I've been close to it when it's hit, but not virtually struck by it. But there was a time when I was out floating the Mighty Mo of the Missouri River, and we had a horrible, horrible lightning storm, just bolts coming straight down, and this poor guide and my friend was in the boat, and I thought I was going to die. I just said, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. He says, well, where do you want me to bring you? There's nowhere to go when you're in the middle of the river and there's a lightning storm. So I just sat in the back of the boat and put my hood over the top of my head, and I prayed to the dear Lord above that we would be safe. Scared the bejesuses out of me.
Was it loud lightning too?
It was loud lightning.
Right.
The bolts were straight down all around us, and it was a horrible experience.
Yikes. Mm-hmm. Are there any urban legends from your hometown? The Corning monster, maybe?
No.
Is it Corning, like the cookler?
Corning. Yep, Corning. Yeah, Corning one. No, not really. I mean, I can't think of really anything any legends. I mean, well, where we lived in Irish Hills, which was, up near the woods. So we literally had bears always walking down our street, and we had turkey running down our street, and we had actually gun holes or bullet holes in our siding from people hunting and trying to shoot things. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Were there blind people where you live?
No, there weren't blind people. I don't know if they just didn't get the direction right, but yeah.
I was watching Deadpool 2 last night, and his roommate's blind, so when they all draw guns, she's pointing to the wrong direction.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it's anyway, very frightening to think. Very frightening to think that there were more than one at several times in our siding.
What item of gear, if you left it home, would ruin your day? Guiding or just in general fishing?
Well, I mean, obviously, personal. If I left my rod home, that's a given. I think I think when you plan to go out fishing, and I always tell this to my gal pals when we get together, you need a checklist. You need to go through your checklist before you get in the car and you go out on your adventure. Because I don't know how many times you'll get to Streamside or Riverside or what have you, and you're going through your equipment, you're like, I forgot my boots, or I forgot my waders. Now, it hasn't happened to me in a long time, but again, if you forgot your rod, there goes your day. I mean, you can't do much, but if you don't have your boots, you're in trouble.
2 weeks ago, I was just about to get on the Beltway. I was like, boots, they're in the garage. I'm like, oh, I gotta turn around. And it's not easy, it's not that far to the Beltway, but man, it's a haul.
Oh, but then again, if you have traffic, it can take you forever to do it. But I always tell my girlfriends, and I tell clients, have a mental checklist or a physical checklist before, and you just have it in the back of your car and just go through it before you go on one of your adventures. Because, as you said, there are things that if you got there and you didn't have it, I've had people who improvise. If they forget their boots, they try to strap their Tevas on, or they've literally gone in the water without their boots on.
Yep, we've done that before.
You improvise a little bit. With a rod, we're not at the point now where we can just take a stick off a tree and tie a string on it,
Homemade tenkara.
Homemade tenkara would be right, yeah, absolutely.
Are there any mistakes you've made that you've learned from? Things you're just like, I can't believe I did that.
I learned, actually this was a guiding client. I had 2 guys that wanted to fish, and I had 2 women who wanted to have some casting instruction. So I'm like, okay, well, there's nowhere to cast next to the river where we were. So I said, look, this is where I want you to go. Go down this path, walk up here, fish. Well, the water was a little high that day, and I took the women and I did some casting. Well, when we reconvened in the afternoon, the guys had an awful time. One fell in, lost his camera, lost his sunglasses. So the valuable lesson that I did learn is you never set clients out on a river when you're not with them. I only did it once, and I would never, ever do it again. I would have either said to the women, let's walk up the river and watch these guys fish for a while, and then I'll take them off the river and we'll go cast, and they can watch you cast, and maybe if they want to practice, but I would never, ever do that again. I learned my lesson once. And, it could have been, again, if you always think of safety first, and you sent 2 men up a river, and literally one of them did fall in. I mean, they could have hurt themselves. I mean, they lost some of their equipment, but so, you're responsible for them. So that was a learning experience for me.
Absolutely. Is there a favorite piece of gear that you have?
A favorite piece of gear.
Something maybe one company just makes better than another?
I generally wear, if you see me out in the river, it's me, because I generally look the same all the time. I mean, my hat, I wear one hat that's actually fraying, it says misguided on it. I love my buff. I love a buff. I love a good buff.
We have drawers of buffs here. Those are our
colorful
favorite.
Buff, because you can use it for lots of things. And so I've worn a buff for a long, long time, but you'll find this very, very funny. I'm small, and most buffs don't come in small, medium, and large. So when I get a buff or someone gives me a buff, and I do have a drawer full of them, I have to have them tailored to fit my neck, because my neck's so small.
Otherwise, the sun's going to go down and burn it.
Exactly. And it doesn't stay up on my neck. So I have to have them tailored. I have to have them taken in. And I have quite a few of them. And I try to match my buff with the color shirt I'm wearing, or, generally, as I said, I wear the same hat. It's a tan hat. But it's not like my buff. It's a nice accessory.
Is there an item of gear that's no longer available that you'd go nuts if a listener had and would send you? We're still trying to get an Orvis line to John Montana Carp, if listeners, I forget which line it was, but he's like, if anyone has one, send it this way.
Gosh, that's another very interesting. Give me the question again.
Is there a discontinued item?
Discontinued item.
That you can't find anymore, but someone might have it in their crawl space and is willing to give it up.
comes to mind. Really.
All right. We'll go on.
I know. I'll probably think about it later when I'm home.
Right. What's a TV show you can binge watch over and over again?
Well, we have been watching a handful of programs, but we love Veep. We've been watching Veep. We love Sneaky Pete. We love Get Shorty. We are now watching, and I don't know if many people call The Midwife, which is excellent. I'm a news junkie, so I watch a lot of news. MSNBC, I flip back for CNN. But binge watching, yeah, we'll watch those programs.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
What's something you won't eat?
I do not like beets unless they're pickled. I will eat anything pickled.
We've got this.
Beets taste like dirt.
Yeah, there's a Havbok here, though. There's a recipe where you cook it with tahina, and it takes away that, like...
The dirt taste?
Yeah, like dirt. And it's the only way I'll eat them.
Dirt.
Yeah.
Dirt.
The
But
Russians love them. We have so many golden beets seeds in the garden right now.
if they're pickled, I'll eat anything pickled.
All right. Pig's feet.
Anything pickled.
All right. That should be a question. What's your favorite pickled thing? All right. If there's a sports team that you need to win or see win a national championship, what would it be?
A sport. Okay. So, now, a sports team that I would like to see win?
Yeah. Are you a long-suffering fan for any teams?
Not really. Not really.
All right.
Not really.
Hot dogs. Do you put ketchup or mustard on them?
Both.
Wow.
And you know who has the best and the best hot dog and is famous for it? Iceland.
Yes.
You have to go to Iceland for their famous hot dogs.
That's what my neighbor said. All the gas stations, it's hot dogs.
Hot dogs.
And finally, do you have any superstitions?
Not so much a superstition, but I have 5 talisman that I carry with me at all times, especially when I'm fishing. And they're in a little leather pouch that I carry in my breast pocket. One's a little embossed angel. One's a shamrock. One says, "I think you're strong" on it. There's 5 of them. And I carry them everywhere. Everywhere I go, everywhere I travel, they're always with me.
That made me think of a last question. Heart-shaped rocks.
Yes. I love heart-shaped rocks. I probably have one for most of the rivers and streams I fished in probably the past 20 years. It all started when I went to guide school. Because Lorianne said, before we start guide school, I want you to pick out something that you can put on the altar to the fly fishing gods. And I was out next to a stream and I found a heart rock, so I brought the heart rock back. It was big, very big. It looked just like a heart. And I put it on the altar for the fishing gods to have a good guide school. And that started it. And so I have a huge collection of heart rocks.
I always think of
small
them.
and large.
I think of you when I see them. I found a huge one on the Salmon River. And I'm like, there's no way I'm schlepping this thing
No,
back.
but you
Kiki will
sent
be
me,
like,
but you sent me pictures of it,
Yeah.
and people do very often. They don't obviously. They'll send a picture of it, but and I don't generally seek them out. You just look down and there they are. And I have big ones and I have small ones, and so yeah, it's kind of a neat thing actually. I heart fly fishing.
Right on. Where can listeners find you if they want to book a trip to the Gunpowder or a stream in the park?
Right. Well, if you're not driving behind me on the Beltway or behind me in the line at McDonald's where you see Misguided Fly Fishing on the back of my car, it's www.misguidedflyfishing.net. Not .com, .net.
And practice CPR?
Oh, yes, you practice CPR, catch, photograph, and release, yes.
Awesome.
I do.
Kiki, thanks for sitting down and telling your story with a snoring 8-year-old on the floor.
Well, you know what? That's perfectly fine. We've already talked about the importance of getting children out on the river, and you know, I know that she will be I'm sure one of our future female gal pal anglers someday.
I just hope she can row me around.
You know what? That's a good reason to have children.
Yeah.
Is because she will be able to row you around when you're old. You know.
I'm hoping like in 2 years.
Well, I was gonna say because you're getting there pretty
Yeah.
quick. But no, it was my pleasure, Rob, and I think sitting down and talking to individuals and having them share their experiences is a really neat way to just keep our community together, I guess. And that's really neat.
Right on.
Right on.
Super.
Fish on.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us for the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast. For more information or to contact Rob, please go to www.robsnowhite.com. This podcast is brought to you by Freestone Productions at freestoneproductions.com.